are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I'm Dog. I am your boy Tank on Twitter. Here to talk to everybody about Auburn's 2024 transfer portal class. We are finally going to grade I didn't even count I had to make a whole new list of videos to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 acquisitions Auburn made the transfer portal last year. A lot of these guys are harder to grade than others are. You saw more of some of these guys than you saw of others. Before we get into the actual grades, as you can see, we have changed the play of the show because we're going to be a shorter show today. It's going to be mostly talking about the grades, talking about Auburn men's basketball, Auburn women's basketball, and then moving on to tonight. So, yeah, not a long show tonight. So, Auburn, basic news that we've missed out since last time we saw each other. I hope everyone had a good Christmas. I was not able to be on the show Thursday. So, Auburn has seen the transfer outs of Keontae Scott. He will not be returning to the Tigers for another year, nor entering the NFL draft. Had an opportunity to do so last year and tried to enter the portal last year too, but came back to the Tigers. Had a pretty mixed review season. Saw an opportunities for Keontae get taken away because, he wasn't playing well. The younger guys came in and were playing lights out. Jay Crawford being one of those guys. And I can't wait to see what more of the 2023 and 24 guys do going forward. Another guy who we'll be talking about a couple of these guys, Percy Lewis, has also announced he'll be entering the NCAA transfer portal as well. I guess finding another year of eligibility for him. Percy just was not a good fit at all. Did not mesh well. We'll talk more about him in a second. And then lastly, Sam Jackson, the fifth, has said that he will be entering the NCAA transfer portal as well. A former quarterback turned wide receiver for the Tigers, or former Cal quarterback turned Auburn receiver of the portal. So, yeah, we talked about him a little bit too. So, with that, going to get right into the grades. We'll be going from my high grades all the way to the low ones. And I think, if you're talking about the highest grades possible, I didn't do pluses or minuses. I just did straight up A, B, C, D, or F. There are quite a few Fs on here, and I did a couple of to be determineds because I think you get another year of them going forward. So get to see, and do you see a lot of them in year one? You get to probably see more of them next year. But starting off with our first A, Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to get an A, and of course, if I was doing pluses, I'm sure he would get a few of those pluses right there. A plus 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 plus. Auburn picked up Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State, and then he ended up having his best season of his career. 50 catches, 981 yards, 8 touchdowns for KLS, averaged 19.6 yards per catch, and was an absolute star for Auburn all last year. You brought in the Freeze 4, and, Keandre Lambert-Smith kind of, I don't want to say took the spotlight away, because I think he meshed very well with what Auburn wanted to do with Cam Coleman and Malcolm right away, and what we get to see next year of Perry. KLS offered Auburn a veteran leader in that wide receiver room, and he was a star right away. I mean, in his first game versus Alabama A&M, he had 80 catches. It's a quieter game versus Cal, and then after the Cal game, you started seeing a lot more of KLS getting utilized. UNM, he had 72 yards. Arkansas, 150 yards. Oklahoma, 77. Georgia, 95. Missouri, a quieter game for him, which kind of sucks because you kind of think about that game and how it went. There was opportunities that Auburn could have get the ball to KLS, and he would have had the 1,000-yard season that Auburn has not had since before I was born. Kentucky, he had 53 catches and a touchdown. I have not been missing the touchdowns, but yeah, 53 catches during that game. Auburn ran the ball a lot in that one. Vanderbilt had 78 yards. ULM 104, A&M 104, and then 116 versus Alabama. The perfect example of an A-plus grade wide receiver. Auburn got everything and more from KLS. And so, yeah, he has earned being the first one named, has earned the first A out of this transfer portal class. Up next, Another guy who I was kind of, not I would say another guy I was surprised by, but a guy I was surprised to see the production we got out of him throughout the entire season. Dorian Mausi also is going to be getting the A grade here. Led the Tigers in tackles. Had 81 tackles, had 2 pass deflections, 2.5 sacks, also had a forced fumble. Coming out of Duke, I mean, I didn't expect a lot from Dorian, but I saw the potential there. Just a smart linebacker that got the job done on the field. Truly was just a solid pickup. Kind of stood out amongst the linebackers. I mean, you had a quieter season from Eugene, who still ended up, being top 4 in tackles on the season. But he was up on everybody, and because after him is 65 tackles. He did everything Auburn needed him to do and more. He stepped out, became a star linebacker for the Tigers. So yeah, I think he's earned an A grade. I mean, I think whenever you lead Auburn in any kind of statistic, I think that kind of earns you the A grade in that regard. Up next, I mean, it's kind of a quicker one. Jaron Thompson, the safety out of Texas, also getting himself an A as well. Second on the team in tackles, had himself a sack, caught the first interception of the year for the Tigers, had 5 pass deflections, 2 total interceptions. So on the year, Jaron had some coverage assignments that were missed, but overall the season, he was a very solid safety that covered the middle of the field very well. He laid a lot of hits, and there were a couple of times where he tried to lay a hit and whiffed on it and gave up a few extra yards. But throughout the season, I would say it was mostly a success of getting when you got Jaron Thompson in. Overall, I mean, it was just a very solid season for him. Auburn, you lose Jalen Simpson, you bring in Jaron Thompson. You didn't get the ball hawking ability that you lost with Simp, but you definitely got a for sure tackler to put back there. And I mean, outside of some of the mistakes that were made in coverage, I don't think he made a lot of them to be super noticeable. So yeah, I think Jaron still has earned that A grade. Now, the 4th and final A grade of this transportal class on the defensive line, Philip Bleedy is going to get an A from me. 16 total tackles, had himself a sack on the year, but that's pretty much all his stat line. When Bleedy was on, he was on in a game. There was a few games. I mean, the Alabama game, he really stood out with 6 tackles. The A&M game, he stood out. Arkansas earlier in the year, and Alabama A&M, he had 3 tackles, and he also had a fumble recovery on the year as well. So there was a lot of injuries going on for the entire team. So you guys see a lot more of the younger guys stepping in. Bleedy, whenever he was healthy, I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with in the middle of the defensive line. So whenever he declared for the draft, I still think Bleedy is going to be one of those guys that a lot of teams are going to be looking at as like a day 3 pickup, and I think he's going to turn out very well in the NFL. Auburn just had to deal with an injury bug on the defensive side of the ball for the majority of the season, and it really took away a lot of the momentum they probably could have had on defense. But I think Bleedy still earned the A. I think he performed well enough to get it because whenever he was fully healthy, I mean, he was a dog. He was an absolute dog on the field. I see Tim Taylor in the comment section. War Eagle Tim, how are you doing tonight? And then with that, going to move on to the grade down. Now, this guy has another year of eligibility left with the Tigers, and I think he's going to be a stud next year. Didn't get to see a lot of him this year, but when he did, he was an absolute on-fire menace as an edge rusher. And of course, we're talking about one former Arkansas State Red Wolf, Kieran Crawford, getting the first and only B, first B. There's 2 Bs. Yeah. Kieran, again, was one of those guys who had to deal with some injuries in the year and still wound up with 22 tackles. He didn't have a sack, which does suck, but I mean, he had against A&M, he had a coming out party. For all the games he played in, so he played in 8 total games in the year, and he had only 1 game where he had less than 2 tackles. So that's Kentucky where he had 1. But A&M, he was on fire. 5 tackles, 4 of those being solo tackles. You kind of hate that you didn't see more sacks from him, but Keldrick Falk helped out a lot with that. Keyron's a true power rusher. You're going to see a lot more of him next year. He's probably going to be starting in the place of Jalen McLeod. Then, of course, you're going to see some of the younger guys coming in as well, and he's going to be opposite of Keldrick. Keyron, again, I think he's going to be a stud next year. He doesn't get the A grade because, you don't get a lot of sacks out of a power rusher. But I think he's solidified in the B category. So, yeah, I think Keyron's going to be great next year, and I'm super excited to see what he can do. Kid's a dog. He's an absolute dog. Just need a full season of health. And I hope that for everybody on roster by the time the season starts. So the last B, this one I was a little taken aback. I didn't take it aback, but I couldn't settle down on what to give this guy. And I'm talking about former A&M defensive tackle / kind of former USC defensive tackle, Isaiah Rakes. He was a nose guard. A nose tackle. He was in the middle of the defensive line. All he was there to do was plug up gaps. That's what you do with the nose tackle. He had 11 tackles on the year, and that's pretty much it. Whenever he was in, I mean, you're not going to hear a lot of nose tackles. It was like last year with Jason Jones. You don't hear a lot about the nose tackle position, but whenever the run gets stuffed, it's noticeable. And I think Rakes and Jones both paired up well in the nose tackle category. I think I struggled whether the B or C here, but I'm going to go with the B. Just know that it was a debate within my own head whether or not it would be a B or a C. So, yeah, Isaiah Rakes gets the last B. And now on to the C categories. We have a couple of C's. Starting off offensive line, Ronan Chambers, the former Akron Zip. C's to me are really just you didn't do anything bad enough to get anything lower, but you didn't do anything great enough to get anything higher. Ronan got in a lot throughout the year. I think he played in every game. Didn't really make any mistakes, but of course, Auburn's offensive line wasn't the best. So kind of a victim of that in this category. So he's going to get a C. Didn't really stand out too much. Kind of buried in the depth chart. But whenever he did play, usually we know which offensive lineman it is that messes up on a scheme. So yeah, Ronan's going to get a C from me. Robert Lewis also finding his way in the C category. 16 catches, 155 yards on the year. Didn't get any touchdowns. Dropped a couple of touchdowns. But there were a couple plays where I debated whether or not Robert Lewis would have been a D or an F at times. But over the course of the year, I think he had a decent enough year for me not to throw shade at some of the missed plays. I think overall he was a very solid wide receiver, and he just didn't mesh in Auburn's offense. And there was so much talent behind him that you didn't see what he does whenever he has the ball in his hand get noticed as much. Malcolm Simmons, of course, stole the show when it comes to slot wide receivers. So I'm going to give Robert a C here. And now there are a couple wide receivers. There's another wide receiver to talk about in a second. But before we do that, we're going to go to a quick 30-second break. Outside this break, we're going to do the to be determined. And then we'll finish out with the D's and the F's. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the remainder of this transfer portal class. If I can find, there we go.
Are you tired of having to rummage through just clothes after clothes after clothes, looking for something to wear? Are you tired of your friends making fun of you for your terrible fashion sense? Well, do we have the shirt for you? Go to thewarreport.com, get your laptop out and do it right now. Go to the shop and get your very own Feelin' Loopy t-shirt as well as your college loop hat, and you can get both of them for only $25 each. Plus shipping and handling, of course. But with that, now back to your regular scheduled program.
Of course, that's available on thewarreport.com. Go to the shop, first page, college loop hat, second page, Feelin' Loopy t-shirt. It's only one way to support the show. The best way to support the show is, of course, we have shows every Tuesday, Thursday, and we have live streams every Sunday. Best way to support the show by liking, by commenting, and by subscribing. Don't forget, leave your grades on in the class in general. I don't get the average grades on here. I probably could do the math real quick and say this is probably around a B minus probably is where this would probably end up at. But there are a good chunk of Fs. But yeah, leave your thoughts on transfer portal class. Who was your favorite pickup? Which pickup kind of left you a little left you pondering why Auburn picked him up. So the to be determined. Rico Walker is going to be the first one to be on the TBD list. Didn't get to see much of Rico. Auburn picked him up, I think, before. Or I think was it before or after the Birmingham Bowl? Birmingham Bowl, Music City Bowl. I can't remember which one, if it was before or after that, but of course, coming from Maryland, Auburn played Maryland, lost to Maryland in the Music City Bowl. Didn't see a lot of him, but also the tight ends didn't get utilized a lot as well. So I'm not going to hold that against him. Young tight end guy too, so I think you're going to see more of him next year. I just don't think it was enough for me to sit there and think, well, he wasn't a great pickup because Auburn didn't use him. He's got more years of eligibility left, so I'm going to leave him as a TBD. Maybe we'll touch back on him after next year. Another guy I said TBD on, Antoine Fegans, the older brother of one Anton Fegans, the Auburn signee, part of that great defensive back class Auburn is bringing in this current recruiting cycle. Auburn brought him in. Not confirmed, but you pretty much assume you bring in the older brother to help recruit the younger brother to the Tigers. Antoine didn't play a lot last year, and of course I think he only saw one game of action. TBD. I mean, he's got another year of eligibility left. Auburn's pretty thin in terms of veterans in the secondary. I just don't think Auburn really had a plan to put him in, like getting him in the starting rotation, because Auburn, again, thin at defensive back. And when they had guys go down, you didn't see Antoine go in. So TBD. Hopefully we can see more of him next year. Dude's talented. So yeah, hopefully we can see more of him next year. Now, moving on to the D category, I only have one guy listed here, and that's Trill Carter, the defensive tackle out of Texas. He had 2 tackles on the year. Actually, 2 solo tackles, 3 total tackles. Had a nice game against Missouri, and that holds him off from anything below that. Auburn whiffed on every defensive tackle that was not Philip Bleedy and Isaiah Rakes. I'll say that too. Other 2 guys you kind of whiffed on them bad. Yeah, Trill Carter are going to get the first and only D out of this transfer portal class. Now, moving on to the Fs. Starting off with Feneje Gote, a guy who at first I thought was a really good pickup for Auburn. I mean, another guy out of Maryland. He had 44 tackles last year. Before that, he had 37. Very solid linebacker. And it becomes an F, not because of what we didn't see out of Feneje, because he only had 5 tackles on the year. Auburn didn't use him at all. I mean, he had a tackle versus ULM. He had a tackle versus UNM. He had a 3-tackle game against Alabama A&M. But Auburn didn't use him. And it kind of confuses me as to why. I mean, he kind of gets the short end of the stick here with the grade, but it really was just a way to fill up a roster space, it felt like. I mean, he didn't get utilized whatsoever, really. And Auburn had a very strong linebacker class last year. So, yeah, he gets an F because, this is his last year of eligibility, and I just don't understand why Auburn picked him up. I mean, it's really just a grade against Auburn for that. Another F is Jaquez Robinson, a former Alabama almost said Alabama Tiger, Alabama Crimson Tide defensive back. Also former Colorado defensive back. Senior coming into Auburn, he had a tackle on the year, and that's pretty much it. He also has a pass deflection. But just again, you get a guy out of the P4. He played at Alabama. Was good enough to play for Deion Sanders too, but just didn't do anything for Auburn. So yeah, gonna keep it going with the F grades there. Another guy who got himself an F grade, Gage Keys, defensive tackle out of Kansas. I think he actually transferred back to Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, when you go, I'm looking at box scores for a lot of this stuff, but if you look at box scores, I mean, he didn't register a single tackle last year. Another one of those defensive tackles that we were pretty much very happy to grab. You thought you had a bunch of young guys. You're trying to fill up some spots that you missed with the guys who departed for the NFL draft the year prior. Gage didn't do much, if anything. I mean, he had 21 tackles with Kansas in 2023, and now he's going back to Kansas for the 2025 season, which I believe will be his last year of eligibility. But, NCAA finds his years of eligibility all around the place, so no telling. Up next, a guy we've talked about already on the show, a guy who is now in the transfer portal yet again, Sam Jackson V. Has been put in the F grade category. Sam Jackson, again, quarterback at Cal last year, transferred to Auburn, was Peyton Thorne's one of his favorite receivers in high school. Transferred back to wide receiver, came to the Tigers, and then on the year, 2 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. It was also part of probably every Auburn fan's least favorite memory on the year. You put him in against Oklahoma, not to catch a football, but to run it twice up the middle on the goal line. Got stuffed twice. Did not work out well for Auburn. I think his 2 catches actually came from like the first 2 games of the year. Yeah, that's right. Alabama A&M and New Mexico, which I don't say first 2 games, first and third game of the year. Which the first catch against Alabama A&M that he had was an absolute great play, and it made me think we were going to see a lot more of Sam Jackson. He made a great play in the back of the end zone for the touchdown, but didn't see much of him. Had a few drops, a couple very memorable against Missouri. So, yeah, gonna give him the F grade in that one. Up next, we got 2 more guys left. Antonio Kite is going to give himself on the F grade here. Antonio Kite had 5 solo tackles in the year, 6 total tackles, had himself a fumble recovery and an interception on the year. Also, I don't know if the fumble recovery counts for this, but also had himself a blocked punt touchdown. Thanks for the block by one Malcolm Simmons. But it's a hard grade to make for this guy because of the fact that he got kicked from the team for not going to practice earlier in the year. He is now in the transfer portal. He is now committed, I believe, to Ole Miss. So he gets an F, didn't finish the year. Played 4 games. You missed the next 8. And there was a lot of plays where it was bad coverage from Antonio Kite, the former Alabama Crimson Tide defensive back. Now, rounding out the transfer portal class, got 1 guy left, saving him for last. Percy Lewis is getting himself on the F grade here. Whenever Percy Lewis committed to the Tigers from the portal, I was not alone in thinking this, but it felt like this was the best pickup of the offseason. You saw Kendrick Lambert-Smith. You're like, oh, he's going to pair very well with the Freeze 4 and be probably the Freeze 5 aspect. Guys like, Robert Lewis and Sam Jackson kind of incorporate themselves into that. You saw what you can get out of Gage Keys and Cheryl Carter. You saw what you can get out of just having depth guys like Dorian Mausi or Fanasia Gote. You look at all that. Percy Lewis was supposed to be the left tackle that was promised for the Tigers. He really was supposed to be the next great tackle for Auburn. You saw it with last year with Gunnar Britton, and you had a pretty decent season out of Gunnar, but Percy had a bad year. Percy Lewis had a terrible year for the Tigers. I mean, there were a lot of plays. I mean, whenever a flag was thrown, you pretty much already assumed who it was. Percy just couldn't catch up to the teams he was playing against. And of course, this is a guy who was an SEC left tackle. He was an honorable mention on the All SEC team in 2023. He transfers to Auburn, and then it's like all that left. He crossed the state line, and every single talent he had at left tackle or just playing in the SEC in general just left. There was like back-to-back plays, I remember last year, where he jumped early and it was a false start, brought him back 5 yards. And then something happened with the next play where the ball was snapped and he moved late. So Percy Lewis gets an F. I mean, it was when you think about a transfer portal player who should make your team so much better, and then he ends up just hurting your team more than not. I mean, I'm not. It's the worst pickup of the portal class, and I've even made jokes about Kite being a plant for Alabama at times, but Percy Lewis, I mean, dude, I wish him best. I wish all these guys the best of luck wherever they go next. It just kind of turns out they did not work out for Auburn, but Percy Lewis was just a bad pickup for Auburn in the short and long term there. Just a terrible season for a guy who all SEC caliber player. It's laughable about how bad the season was. But yeah, that does it for the transfer portal class. I mean, as a whole, I mean, it wasn't a terrible class. There were a lot of Fs on the back end. But for what you got, I mean, you had a couple of flops and you had 4 gems, I would say 5 gems really, moving forward. Condre Lambert-Smith out of this class turned into one of the best Auburn Tiger receivers of all time. He had one of the best seasons of all time. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns, which was top 2 in the SEC. He had top 5 yards in the SEC. Should have been first team all SEC wide receiver, but because he wears orange and blue, he didn't get the recognition he deserved, or he's not 17, so he didn't get the recognition he deserved for that either. Yeah, Condre Lambert-Smith, one of the best transfer portal pickups I've seen in a long time. I mean, it kind of depends on what you think of a transfer portal classes, but he might actually be the best portal pickup Auburn has ever gotten. And I don't think that's in the least bit an exaggeration. Yeah, KLS is and will be remembered as an all-timer Auburn receiver. If I made an all-time Auburn team, I don't know if I keep him off the list. He was a stud all year long. So, yeah, as a whole, this class probably gets a B, probably B minus, closer to a C because of the back-end players. But overall, I mean, you got a lot of great things out of these transfer portal guys at the high end. So super stoked to see where some of these guys end up. I know Bleedy and KLS have both declared for the draft out of this class. I think that you've gotten a couple of transfer outs. Keys, Sam Jackson has, and I'm trying to remember all the other guys who have. I don't think some of these other guys have in the portal, but yeah. Sam Jackson, Percy Lewis, and Gage Keys have all entered the portal. Gage Keys, the only one I think so far is committed somewhere. But yeah, KLS, dude, dog. Now, to round out the show, we got some basketball talk. Auburn women's basketball played Norfolk State today. The 12-4 Spartans came into Neville Arena, and they had a day versus Auburn. I mean, Auburn lost this game, and Auburn only shot 5 threes. They got out-rebounded 42-33. They gave up the ball too many times. And the fact is they did give up the ball too many times because Norfolk State had more turnovers than they did. Auburn also shot the free throws. They shot a lot of free throws. I mean, almost over double. Auburn shot 32 free throws, made 20 of them. Norfolk State shot 13, made 9 of those. When you get 20 points off of free throws, you'd probably expect to see a W get added to the column. But yeah, Auburn's still dealing with a lot of health issues in terms of not getting players healthy. And I mean, not healthy yet. You got a few more days now. I mean, you got 5 more days till SEC conference play starts. I think it starts on the 4th or the 2nd. The 2nd. So yeah, you got 4 days to get ready for that. Of course, we'll be previewing that game tomorrow, actually, because that game will be going down on. Oh no, we'll be previewing that on the Thursday show, and then talk about it next week on the Sunday show. So yeah, you got to get better. I don't know what it will take. I don't know what you need. You got to get healthy, and you got to do it quick. Lost Norfolk State. Norfolk State is not a great look for Auburn, especially coming off of a day where a game like last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week, but you beat Alabama State 83-40. You got to turn things around for you. Donna Gaston, again, had another great game for her. I mean, she's leading Auburn in points per game. She had 29 points versus Norfolk. But yeah, you got to get healthy. If you want to play to the level this team can and should be playing at, you got to get healthy. That's the biggest issue with this team right now is health, and hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. If this team gets knocked out of talks because of that, it's going to suck. It's going to suck a lot. But this team is a lot better than the record suggests, and I will believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, you lost to Norfolk with half a roster by 6 points. You lost to Kansas by 1. You lost to Cal by 4. You lost to Oregon, who's the top 25 team in the country, by 2. You just got to turn some of these close losses into wins, and that'll help you out a lot there. But yeah, not a great loss to get at Norfolk State. All right, so to round out the show, Auburn men's basketball will be taking on the Monmouth Hawks tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. CST in Neville Arena. Will be the last non-con game of the season for the Tigers before they take on, I think, South Carolina not South Carolina, Missouri. There we go. I looked down too far. Missouri on the 4th at 3:00 at home. Yeah. Auburn should win this game. Monmouth is 2-10. They have a 99% chance to win this game. Everything points into the favor of the Auburn Tigers winning this game. But Monmouth has a dude in Abdi Bashir, 21 points per game. He's also shooting 40% from the three-point line, 92% from the free throw line, 42% from the field. Dude's a scorer through and through. Gonna be the biggest guy to look out for there. They only have one other guy who's averaging over 10 a game, and Madison Durr, who's also leading the team in assists and steals as well. But yeah, Monmouth again, 2-10 team. The only team they've beaten were Seton Hall and Fairfield. Yeah, Auburn should win this game big. They really should. Excuse me. Yeah, it's hard to really preview these games. I'm super excited for conference play. Missouri is going to be a great game to start off with. Missouri is one of those teams that are really good as well. And the AP poll doesn't care about nothing. So, yeah, I strongly believe that's going to be a great test to start the year with Missouri. I mean, they're currently 10-2. They have a win over Kansas under their belt. Of course, they just got done last week. They lost to Illinois. Auburn, of course, hasn't played since the 21st, and then get a nice little tune-up game versus Monmouth tomorrow. Super excited for that game. Can't wait to talk more about that game going forward. Probably have a whole preview show for SEC conference play going forward. So that being said, that's going to do it for the Summit of the College League podcast. Of course, I'm not going to give a prediction. It's hard to give predictions for the games where Auburn should like blow out their opponent because I'm not going to predict like an 80-40 game or something like that. It's a hard thing to predict. Auburn's going to win the game. And get ready for SEC conference play. So it's gonna be super, super fun. The SEC is tough this year, really tough. So yeah. With that being said, that will do it for the Summit of the College League podcast. Let me know what you want me to grade next. I'm sure the high school class will probably come up soon. But the transport class I had to knock out. I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off for a couple weeks now. I meant to do it Thursday, but then didn't get home till late on Christmas. But finally knocked it out. Again, let me know what you think of the transport class. How do you grade the portal class overall? Let me know in the comment section below. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe right here on YouTube. And, of course, check us out on social media platforms as well. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the works. All those at The College Loop. And also check me out on Twitter as well at your boy The Tank, at YABOY The Tank. And on Instagram as well at Dylan Larck, DYLNLRCK. War Eagle Rodney, War Eagle Butch Fly. And, of course, with all that being said, don't forget to check out the audio version of the show too. But all that being said, thanks for watching some of the College League podcast. And as always, War Eagle.